Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, I thought that I would just give my little quick fight review of this fight for those of you that did not end up buying this card yesterday on pay per view. I believe that it was about $40, and I decided that it was enough overall, or that it was, affordable enough overall to buy it on top of that. I am a person that usually buys the vast majority of the pay per views when it comes down to, or, we end up getting the pay per views over here but only if they're decently competitive. I'm not usually interested in fights that, in my opinion, they're not decently competitive. That's why personally, I did not get the Gervonta Tank Davis versus Isaac Cruz fight because I did not think that it was really going to be super duper competitive. I did not get the Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley rematch because I thought Jake Paul more than likely was going to win again, and I was not interested in that match, and that's exactly what happened. But this fight, when it came down to it, even though there wasn't really any A grade star power on here, it was a very interesting card. You had a certain amount of somewhat talented heavyweights, or what I will say is this: at least decently, decent matchups in the heavyweight division. A lot of these guys, in my opinion, they're not really A grade skilled fighters, but it was somewhat interesting to see. You got to see a couple of prospects yesterday. Gerald Washington, he fought once again, and I've never really had a super huge high opinion of his skill set, but it's always somewhat interesting to see who he's going to face. Of course, you had Frank Sanchez, who, in my opinion, and of course, that is a fighter that is in Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez's gym, trained by Eddie Reynoso. Frank Sanchez, in my opinion, very very decently talented fighter. But the only thing I would say about Mr. Frank Sanchez is that sometimes he does need to be a little bit more offensive. He does need to dare to throw a little bit more because if he's in one of these fights, no matter who it be against, because I think Frank Sanchez, to be quite honest with you, just in terms of his feet, just in terms of his head movement and all around the skill and the speed that he has, he's going to be one of the most talented heavyweights in the world. No doubt about it. He is going to be up there with anyone within that heavyweight division. But with Mr. Frank Sanchez, I do need to see him throw a little bit more in some of those bigger fights. The big question is, how is Frank Sanchez going to do against some of the other top contenders? Of course, in the fight before this, he was in a very big fight against F.A. Ajagba, who was the undefeated African prospect. And I pretty much guessed that Frank Sanchez was going to pull out that fight because F.A. Ajagba, he's pretty much like a lesser version of Deontay Wilder with not as much power. So when it comes down to it, all in all, I assumed that Frank Sanchez was going to win that fight. He did look good, but I still thought that there were certain things that he could have done more in that fight. And he fought very similarly in this fight. And it reminded me of when Arasani Lara, when he would fight Devin Rodriguez or when he would fight another fighter, and you just felt that Arasani Lara could have done more in the fight. It still was a great performance, but you can't necessarily rank it on the A plus grade, even though he almost dominated every single round because, I mean, to be real with you, you really should have got the opponent out of there. It just is what it is. But Frank Sanchez is extremely talented, no doubt about it. I look forward to definitely seeing him a little bit later on down the line. Canelo Alvarez believes personally that within a year he will be heavyweight champion of the world, and he very well could be. He is potentially going to give any one of those fighters a problem. I personally would very much love to see Frank Sanchez versus Alexander Usyk. That would be a fantastic fight. But anyways, overall, just talking about some of the other stuff, just heading straight into the main event, Mr. Luis Ortiz versus Charles Martin. I was very decently excited for this fight, and I actually think a certain amount of other people, they were excited for the fight as well because this kind of heading into it, I don't want to say that it was 50-50, but it was about 60-40. Some people may have favored Luis Ortiz. Some people may have favored Charles Martin. I personally favored Luis Ortiz going into this fight. I thought actually that he was going to win by decision. I knew that getting a knockout would not be impossible because Charles Martin, in every loss that he's had in his career, he hasn't been stopped. But the way Luis Ortiz has looked as of lately, especially against even that of lower competition, sometimes he'll get knockouts, but sometimes he may just coast to a decision or, he just hasn't been able to put him away. But I can't say that I was shell-shocked that he ended up getting the knockout because Luis Ortiz, in my opinion, he's all around the more skilled fighter than that of a Charles Martin, and he just has a decent amount more power. And if Luis Ortiz does hit you correctly, especially with that left cross, he can hurt you very, very badly. It just is what it is. He is a very decently talented heavyweight fighter. I wouldn't say that he necessarily has A-plus skills for the heavyweight division, but he is decently talented, and he has great athleticism, even at this age of 42 years old. And this, in my opinion, for Charles Martin, I'm not going to say that it was his last chance. Anyone has an opportunity to build themselves back up, but, there's just certain fighters that you can tell that they're just never going to be A grade. When it came to Adrian Broner, the lighter weight divisions, people held on for so long and always was hoping that, he was going to put on the performance of a lifetime and finally, suck it up and put on a great performance against an A grade fighter. But he just never did. And I think it's the same thing with Charles Martin. Charles Martin is somewhat talented. He's a decent athlete. He's lengthy. He's a southpaw. He's decently fast. He doesn't have the worst power in the world. He was actually able to knock down Luis Ortiz twice yesterday. And the only other one in, Luis Ortiz's career that was actually able to ever knock him down was Mr. Deontay Wilder. So Charles Martin is a decent athlete. He's not the worst boxer that I've ever seen, but he's just never going to be on that A-grade level. And to be quite honest with you, if Charles Martin is ever anything above that of a gatekeeper for the heavyweight division, I would be heavily surprised. I'm not really even sure if he's ever going to make it into the top 10 rankings again. I think there was that one time where he won that IBF belt against that one Ukraine or Russian fighter, because of course the Russian fighter, they ended up overall, tearing their ACL or breaking their knee or something of the sorts. But when it comes down to it, other than that, I don't think Charles Martin is ever going to win overall another belt in his career. I just don't see it. To be honest with you, I don't even see him making it in the top 10 ranks. What do I think went wrong for Charles Martin in this fight? Same thing that always goes wrong for him. I think that Charles Martin, he seems to have somewhat of a decent foundation of skills, but he doesn't really change his head levels that much. Luis Ortiz isn't really super duper known for doing that either. That's why he was able to get knocked down twice in this fight. But if you're facing a guy like Luis Ortiz, you have to try to move your head out of the zone, because you're not a Deontay Wilder. You're not a guy that has one-shot knockout power. You have decent power, but you don't have one-shot knockout power, not against the elite fighters. And when it comes down to it, Deontay, the reason why he was able to escape with those fights is not only because he has a very decent chin and a high level of confidence in himself, but he has a right hand that can knock out almost anything. Charles Martin, he has, like I said, he's a decent athlete, but it was only a matter of time, more than likely, before Luis Ortiz was going to hit him on that jaw and more than likely hurt him very, very badly. And that's exactly what happened. What Charles Martin had to do in this fight, in my opinion, was change levels, move his head out of the way. And Charles Martin has never been known for doing that. That's why he got knocked out so easily against Anthony Joshua in Anthony Joshua's first title fight. I remember it just like it was yesterday. And Anthony Joshua isn't known for excellent head movement either. But I remember in that Charles Martin fight, Charles Martin, he would try to go throw a left towards Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua overall, I believe he would dip down to the right, and then he would basically counter with the right hand, and he would easily knock him down. What I will give Charles Martin a lot of credit for is that he did show a lot of heart in this fight. He did try to get back up. He did try to fight through it, but unfortunately he was just too damaged after that second knockdown. And he was somewhat tangled within the ropes, but I don't think that that's the reason why Luis Ortiz was able to knock him down. Of course, he was way hurt before then. It just is what it is. But what do I personally think is next for both of these fighters? As for Charles Martin, I guess go back to the drawing board, try to improve. But like I said, Charles Martin is really nothing more than that of a gatekeeper. To be honest with you, I'm not even quite sure if he would defeat someone like a Derek Chisora. It just is what it is. So Charles Martin, when it comes down to it, if he even wants to continue his career, that's pretty much what he is destined, to be. It is what it is. I know a certain amount of people, they may not like that. They may say that that's a little bit harsh, but there's certain fighters overall, as they say, with everything, there's levels to this game. And Charles Martin is a C-grade fighter. It just is what it is. Luis Ortiz, I'm still interested to see what level he is on. I think that this definitely proved that he is still one of the top contenders within the division. Who would I personally like to see Luis Ortiz against next if he continues fighting? And I do believe that he will. Well, I would like to see him maybe against an Andrew Ruiz Jr. I would like to see him against possibly, maybe if Anthony Joshua lost that next fight against Usyk, I would like to see him maybe face Anthony Joshua. I'm trying to think overall of who else is out there. Joseph Parker would be very potentially interesting. Joe Joyce. I really think any of those fighters would be very, very interesting next. So hopefully maybe Luis Ortiz can get a hold of any one of those fighters, because in my opinion, any one of those fights for him next would be a 50-50 fight. It would be very, very interesting to see if he could beat any of those fighters, because some of those other heavyweight guys as well, they have a decent foundation of skills, and they're very decent athletes as well. Whether it be a Joseph Parker or an Andrew Ruiz or even a Dillian White, personally I think Luis Ortiz, he might be a little bit too much outgunned against someone like a Dillian White, but you never know, because Luis Ortiz once again has that A-grade power. But when it comes down to it, Luis Ortiz, I think that there's several fights for him out there if he wants to continue fighting, especially for his daughter, of course, who has that medical condition, unfortunately. But we'll just see what happens. But anyways, very entertaining fight, very interesting fight. I actually had Charles Martin pretty high up on the scorecards, at least by 3 points, before he ended up getting knocked out. But sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles. It just is what it is. But anyways, congratulations to Mr. Luis Ortiz. I would like to see him in some big fights next, but we'll have to see what happens. Anyways, that's really about it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.